Well, welcome to the journey. And today we have Lisa Paskey Silvi with us today. And this is her first time being on the journey. And so I appreciate you being here today. And the journey is just a show that attempts to bring guests on that can share a little bit about their story. And maybe they've had setbacks in their life, but it's maybe a little bit less about the setbacks and more about what did they learn having gone through those setbacks and where are they at in their life now and how is their life transformed from some of those setbacks. So welcome to the journey, Lisa. And as we always start off at the very beginning, what does Lisa do for fun when you have an opportunity for fun?
Well, over the last year, music has been my outlet. It's what's really gotten me through. And animals, my dog. I just got my other dog, or well, I lost a dog and gained a dog. My senior Shiba Inu just passed away, Desi Lou, and I just got my husky Dillinger back, who's been an absolute handful, but a joy. And he's bonded with Donatella, who I utilize in my fledgling nonprofit that I am attempting to start here locally in this community. It's called the Underground Arc. I didn't come up with that name, I can't take credit. One of the girls I've worked with and helped her leave her abuser suggested that name because I met her in a secret location with my personal PTSD animal. I delivered my dog to her for comfort and compassion because she needed it. Um, she was too afraid to call the police.
Gotcha.
Um, Now she's free. So that's what our event this weekend is about. I've collaborated with three other domestic violence survivors. The four of us are putting on a free community event for Rockford. And we hope to bring as many women out of the woodwork as possible with this.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, Lisa, tell us a little bit, and we're definitely going to talk about your event and your organization, the Underground Arc. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about? Well, you were talking about music and how music has been, uh, in a way, therapeutic for you. What type of music do you? I imagine you listen to a lot of different type of music, but what's something that
Oh,
brings comfort to you?
oh wow. Well, the blues. I love the blues. I've always connected Otis Redding and but Jim Morrison has been the biggest influence on my life, believe it or not. Personally, I wanted to read everything he talked about, what made his brain work the way that it did, his poetry I connected with, and then his music, of course. So my favorite band is The Doors. Always has been, always will be. But Stevie Nicks and Ann Wilson are vocally and because they're such prolific songwriters, the biggest influences on me as far as females, for sure.
Gotcha. Okay. And Lisa, where'd you grow up? Where'd you grow up?
Rock- Rockford, Illinois.
Oh,
I was
okay.
born at Memorial.
And I'm sorry, where'd you go to high
I was
school?
born at Rockford Memorial,
Oh, right
and
from
then
Memorial.
my freshman year of my first day at Rockford East High School, I met a man that later became a police officer. We were in the nursery together,
Oh,
January 20th. For Rockford Memorial. And here we are sitting next to each other at freshman year in Mr. McKay's English class at Rockford East. It was really kind of neat. We had the same birthday, and then we didn't meet in person until we were 14, I guess. And then he
wow.
became an officer. Nice
Got,
guy.
gotcha. Oh, very nice. And now, do you have siblings?
I have an older sister named Laura, and then I have a brother named Dan, who's been my brother since I was 11. And family is not always about blood,
Hmm.
but he's my brother. He always will be. He
Gotcha.
walked me down the aisle. My dad passed away, so then after he walked me down the aisle, he told me that he had my father's ashes in his pocket. So he was smart to keep that to himself until he got me down the aisle. Down the aisle.
Sure, sure. Gotcha. And how old were you when your dad died?
33.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, he died of prostate cancer, and it was completely avoidable. He didn't want to go to the doctor. He was
Um,
embarrassed, so he didn't go until the symptoms were crippling. But that's a whole nother podcast.
sure, sure. Gotcha. And I heard you say earlier you have at least a daughter, right? You have one child. Do you have other children?
I have a daughter who's 20, and I
Okay.
have an amazing, beautiful son who's 9.
Okay. And what's your daughter's name?
Breezy.
Breezy. Okay.
Yeah, she has my I'm sorry, my paternal grandmother's name, Breezy
Oh,
Carroll.
gotcha. And so Breezy's 20 and okay.
They're both very spirited children.
Gotcha.
And my
And
daughter's a spirited adult now, excuse me.
what was that?
My daughter she's a free spirited adult. I had to correct.
Sure, sure. And so when you were at East High, were you into obviously music was a big part of your life, but did you play music? Were you in choir? Were you involved with extracurricular activities?
I was in the shadows, where I put myself. I was the kind of kid that you stepped on my foot, I'd say, I'm sorry.
Mm.
And there's people that I went to high school with that would verify that for you. That's how I was. And so I did tech theater. I loved building the background, the backdrop. I loved working the lights, the elliptical. I loved theater. I just was chicken to get on the stage.
Mm.
So I did backstage stuff and I loved it. And I loved Pam Kaufman was our teacher. She was an amazing lady and she helped me through a very rough time my sophomore year of high school. It changed the trajectory of my life. It changed me. It changed who I became as an adult. And that teacher helped me through it. So I just wanted to give her a little shout out.
Sure, sure. It is amazing how much I work a lot with educators, and it's amazing to me stories just like that, where somebody, sometimes it's definitely very apparent that it was a difficult time, and sometimes it's those they're just being themselves, and they end up being a resource or a light in that darkness just by being someone who's consistent and who sees the possibility and a place someone to talk to or whatever that may be. So it's pretty amazing how there are teachers like Mrs. Kaufman out there.
Hmm. Oh, and I'll never forget her. And my fourth grade Homewood, Mrs. Homewood, that was another amazing teacher. There's a man that is planning on speaking at this event coming up this weekend that is a teacher in Rockford. His name is Dale Beiersdorf. And any educators that would like to come out and speak on, I think training needs to be implemented in the schools. That's one thing I anticipate doing in the future. I want to go back to college. I want to work in the school system. I want to talk to school age kids before they're at the dating age about how you treat another human being when you're in a relationship and what you allow them to do to treat you. It's reciprocated respect. These children aren't learning it at home anymore.
Yeah, so what maybe we can jump into that. You have um the word you use is a survivor of domestic violence, and now you have a mission to raise awareness and help raise that awareness, help break the stigma around the cycle of domestic violence. And so and none of us, I don't know. I know a lot of individuals who have a lot of education. I don't know if anyone actually is an expert in something. We have people who are more experienced and have been practicing something for a long time. So we have some more experience because we've been practicing for a while. But I think when someone has their own observation, their own perspective of having gone through something, I think that in itself can be invaluable. And so, what things have you learned in your own journey, Lisa? And what are some things that young girls, or maybe not so young, and as well as men, what would you want them to know about the cycle of domestic violence?
So much. There's so much. My main statement that I make, my go-to thing initially after, usually by the time they connect with me, it's because they want out. They just don't know how to get out. Um, but I encourage them to press charges because that was the mistake that I made. I should have pressed charges 15 years ago. Honestly, I did press charges after a man that I broke up with a man in the 90s, and he didn't think I would. I caught him cheating. That night, he ran me down with his car, and he left me on the road for dead. He had never hit me. There was a red flag of immaturity, but I just avoided what caused him to have an immature reaction. That was my solution to the problem. I didn't address the red flag for what it truly was. It was a danger. That immaturity was a huge red flag because he couldn't take it that he didn't get his way. And narcissists tend to smash things when they don't get their way. So I did press charges. Um, I still fell through the cracks in my marriage, unfortunately. I reached out many times. I was too afraid to press charges. I was convinced I would ruin our family. I was conditioned to believe it would be my fault our family would implode. And it's a heavy burden to carry. And you convince yourself the children aren't getting hit. So just don't say anything to upset them. And you can protect your children and you can deal with this. And you need to press charges and you need to get out. But getting out is number one. Pressing charges is my main message to these women before they attack you again in court or by use of the system, because it's so easy. My therapist and I discuss this a lot. I'm sure you've heard of Willow Creek in town.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Willow Creek in town. Julie Rylett works with animals
Oh,
with her
okay.
page. Yeah. And I thought I came up with the idea. She's doing it already in her office.
Oh, okay.
She's way ahead of me as far as her education and her plans and making her dream come true. And I aspire to be like her someday. I think everything she does is amazing. But we talk about how most of these emergency orders of protection, a lot of them are people are using them and they're abusing the system, and then the kids are ultimately the victim.
Mhm.
In all of these domestic violence situations, the children are the ultimate victim.
And when you talked about, and I agree with you 100% that the children end up being just as much victimized as in this case, or in many cases, the mom is, and that and I think you use the verbiage, the lies that we tell ourselves that
Yes.
that are driven by that fear, the fear of something's going to get worse, or fear that it's going to be your fault and it'll be worse, is what can paralyze people to stay in the same situation.
Yes, paralyzed, that's a good word. Numb is the word I would use. I very plainly, calmly told a police officer in my driveway on May 14th of 2020 that my husband had attempted to smother me. And I showed her a giant bruise on my arm and I said, I thought his knee was going to break my arm. I was being smothered and I wasn't sure if I was getting off that porch. And she said, do you want to press charges? I said, no, look at our address. Just document it, please. I hope that she did because I haven't read that police report. But I remember saying that to her and I hope she remembers hearing it.
And so thinking back to that time period, because I think if other women, people, but other women listening, if what do you think was the reason at that time that you declined to press charges? Thinking back at that moment, and then obviously later that changed.
Right. I limited her options. I basically tied her hands. She couldn't do anything for me because I told her flat out I wasn't willing to press charges. What we did do is we sent her a lifeline that she, I guess the protocols, they're just not in place. But what else could I say? I said, please look up the history. Please look up the pattern. Please document this. I basically said everything, but I'm too afraid.
Mhm,
Please help me.
mhm.
So, what do you do in a situation like that? Well, things need to change. That's what, that automatically, I should have been rescued,
Mhm.
and I wasn't.
It's interesting, Lisa, that I was just had a conversation with someone just in the last few days, and this was a little bit different situation. I was talking about mental illness and chronic mental illness, where the adult son was in a situation where he wasn't on his medication, and there was a cycle of enabling that was happening by the parents of the adult son, not wanting him to be arrested, even though he was destroying property and threatening. And it was only when there was some line that got crossed that allowed them internally then to press charges, was when their adult son finally got help. And he was able to get help. He was a completely different person when he was taking the medication, and they then, after that time period, knew that the medication, or that having him arrested wasn't because he was being criminal. It was because he was breaking the law, but he wasn't in this particular case a criminal. It just needed to allow the system to do what they could do to help the family and help him get the help he needed. And I think sometimes in domestic violence, if we don't activate certain parts of the system, then there's no way that the system will then be able to work for the victim.
That's correct. It's just you. The same principle goes. You have to ask God for help if you want help.
Mhm,
You have to speak up. That's what
mhm,
I'm trying to do.
yeah,
It's not easy for someone like me to speak up.
mhm,
But I encourage and that's another thing we want to talk about the event, actually. We'd like to touch on. I'm glad you brought that up. Speaking up for others is so important when you see someone that can't speak up for themselves. In this case, this man that needed his medicine, without it, he's not himself. He needs someone else to be his voice. We all need that in the cycle of violence. It doesn't necessarily have to be your spouse that is abusing you. You can be abused in so many different ways, verbally, financially, and it doesn't discriminate. And it's sweeping the nation. We're not treating each other as human beings the way that we did years ago. I hate to see this happening to the world. But if you take care of your own little universe, your own little corner of your own little universe, and everyone were to do that, and everyone were to be compassionate and speak out for the defenseless and help the less fortunate, imagine what we could accomplish as a planet. Paying it forward matters. Even if a little bit, even one compliment, it matters.
yeah, I completely agree with you, Lisa, that uh, that it's similar to climbing, climbing a mountain, or trying to change the world. We have to first focus on just one step at a time with what we can do, and not get overwhelmed with how far we may have to go, if we just focus on what we can do where we're at right now. And so, tell us a little bit about what's coming up this coming weekend, and tell us about the event, and tell us about what you guys, who's involved, and what would you like to accomplish.
Okay. Um,
Oh, we just hit mute. There we go.
Hey there.
Yep,
Okay.
perfect.
Sorry.
That's okay.
All four of us are bringing different aspects to the table. So, Laura Gabriella Kane is the founder of Marshmallows Hope. And I have watched her organization and her just flourish over the last year and a half since I first reached out to her on Facebook. She helped me through my personal journey, and she's laying down the groundwork for other women now. She took her pain and made purpose and beauty out of that pain. I admire that so much. So I'm trying to do the same. And Sherry Camp, she wrote Pathways to Healing. Also, Laura Gabriella Kane is just coming out with her second book as well. She wrote can you help me out with that? You know the names of the two books she wrote. I'm looking
Yeah,
for my
yeah. Laura, you're going to kill me for this, but I just I forgot the name of it too. But I will look it up real quick. So, but keep going.
okay.
So Sherry and
Pathways
Laura.
to Healing is Sherry Camp's workbook. She wrote an entire trauma workbook with a full curriculum that you follow for a year through your journey. It's for people that just have trouble journaling, I think, that, they just need that extra bit and she basically, you're getting advice as you work through it, as you're journaling, as you're doing given exercises by someone who has been through every trauma you can imagine. What this girl has been through is her story is amazing. And Laura tells her personal story in her book as well. Her son Zachary committed suicide 3 years ago this past September, and part of the reason she believes is he was in a domestic violence situation. He was being physically abused. Laura had no idea, and so she's obviously, this is a very, very sensitive and important subject for her. I saw her give her first speech Friday night at a gala dinner for Marshmallow's Hope, and it was the most touching. And it just, I think fate brought us together. I believe in um, things happening for a reason. I believe there's a reason her and I met. I believe there's a reason Aaron Wilson was there dining. He didn't even know about the gala. He came in and said a few words from WIFR, and he made a very touching speech, and I went out and thanked him, and it was a wonderful night. So she's doing incredible work. And then the fourth girl, Erica Rock, is how this kind of started. The event blossomed from the idea that we wanted to create a Zumba studio for her. She's running the space above Rockford Art Deli, which anyone that is in Rockford knows Rockford Art Deli. Last 10 years, they've been an asset to this community and wonderful for Rockford. Well, the loft space above it is where this event is being held. And you go between Rockford Art Deli in the alley and Noah's Ark Animal Sanctuary. There's a door. We'll have plenty of, signs posted, people there. You will be able to find it easily. Noah's Ark parking lot and the city street. It'll be 4 p.m. on Saturday afternoon. So um, I'm sure Noah's Ark and Rockford Art Deli will be happy to direct anyone that gets lost. The alley between them is it's the door that goes
Sure.
up to the loft is how you find this event. So it's
Gotcha.
at 4 p.m. and we're really hoping a lot of people from the community will come out. I'm going to ask at one point in time for any people that are survivors, or if there is anyone that needs help, I will be there. They can talk to me privately. I'll have my card and I will be happy to talk to anyone that is concerned about a family member. They can just pull me to the side and I'll be more than happy to talk to them.
Well, well, Lisa, I think that you have a pretty obviously a pretty strong lineup, and Laura is I know Laura very well. She's on my board of directors for Shadow or Silence,
Yeah.
and she and I have spoken a handful of times together. We spoke out in Edwards Air Force Base earlier this year in August, and then she was our featured speaker at our annual event, SOS's annual event in the end of September. And as you know already at her gala the other night, she has a very powerful story, and
Yes.
it's and though her story does talk about Zach dying as a result of suicide, it also shows that it's not just about how Zach died. It's about those factors that led to him being in that darkness,
Right.
and
Right.
most importantly, what Laura and yourself now, as well as Sherry and Erica, are trying to do to raise that awareness, raise that light. So when people are struggling with whatever it may be, we're talking, obviously now about domestic violence and the different aspects of how that can be, because it isn't, like you said, it isn't always physical violence.
Mhm.
It could be the threat of physical violence. It could be the emotional that comes with the threat of that physical violence, or manipulation with finances, or
The
uh,
loss of your children is one of the top threats that a narcissist will use, and it is an abusive threat, a psychological threat to a woman to keep her in under glass, basically, keep her in that cage, keep her on that leash, is to tell her, to threaten her with the law. I will make you look like a bad mom. That is one of textbooks. The threat of the loss of your child. There's nothing worse you can do to a woman, I don't think, or a parent, because one of the people I work with is male, and he contacted. Well, anyways, we just happened to come across the fact that we had this issue where he lost his daughter for over a year and he didn't deserve to. That was why I touched on the EOP thing earlier. He lost his daughter for over a year. And of course, he called the mother 100 times when he was served with these papers because he never touched her. And he called her and he's like, what are you doing? You can't, this is my best friend. This is my little girl, my little Minnie Mouse. What are you doing? And then he got thrown in jail
mm,
because he broke the order of protection. But he was a great dad that never did what that order of protection said he did. So
mm,
the system is a whole nother nightmare that these people can get lost in. He was a victim to the system, not
mm.
to domestic violence. He was accused of domestic violence and he was innocent completely. He couldn't have been more innocent. It's really tragic. Who's the victim? Little girl.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that, just being and recognizing, similar to when Laura talks about suicide or when I talk about suicide, no one situation is exactly the same. And
Right.
we know that as well with violence, is no one situation is exactly the same. There are patterns, and those patterns are are um, are the similarities that we can talk about, and then by talking about, give people permission to go, oh, that reminds me of my story. It may not be exactly the same,
Yeah.
and if Lisa did A, B, and C to break free and start rebuilding her life, then maybe I can too,
Hmm.
similar to what Laura did in her life or is doing in her life. And I imagine Sherry and Erica are in a very similar situation.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Um, Taking pain and giving purpose from that pain is basically Sherry's mission, my mission, Laura's mission with all of our Sherry's books. And she does a trauma talk with Sherry. She's reaching out to try to help others. She works with the jail, with women that come out. She's working with the chaplain of the jail, I believe, every Wednesday, and helping these women as they're released to get acclimated, to find their purpose. She has something with a school. I wish I knew the name of it, but it will be at the event at her table. It's going to be called the Imagination Station, and it is to demonstrate all the different types of uh, modalities women could get into, from certificate programs all the way up to, well, Sherry got her bachelor's, and you can go as far as you want. It's never too late. You're going to stay around. You might as well be educational about it, right?
sure,
So you can
exactly.
do whatever you want. You really can.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the book that we were referring to with Laura is called "Lost to Darkness, Enlightened by Grace."
Yes.
And I think just similar, if you talk to Laura, you know that she doesn't see herself as a writer, but she needed to share her story. And I think it's very much, we don't have to be this phenomenal, super articulate story, even though do think she did a great job with that. It is just about being able to, having the courage, like
Yeah.
you're doing right now, just to share and just to talk about the things that for so long people didn't believe, or you didn't believe you could even talk about,
Yeah.
and that it's okay. So going
There
back,
is a gentleman. Oh, I'm sorry. Go
no, no,
ahead.
go, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say there is a book I'd like to mention. A
Sure.
gentleman named Darren Snell wrote this book. He lives out in North Carolina. I was introduced to him through Laura Gabriella Kane, and he wrote this book. When you were talking, it made me think of him because he was inspired at 3:17 or 3:19 in the morning to write this book, and he said, "Well, what are you talking about, God? I'm not a writer."
Mhm.
But he wrote a book and then he entitled it by the time that he got this message. And he wrote a book just like, but his message also is to suicide awareness, which
Mhm.
is Laura's main goal with her nonprofit Marshmallows Hope. The common thread that we have is the domestic violence, which is what this event, defending your dance, protecting your peace, is about. It's about domestic violence, but suicide definitely um, goes hand in hand with the cycle of violence, mental illness, it all. Traumas, childhood traumas, they're so intertwined, and that's what we need to talk about. The stigma on mental illness, changing the system so these kids are protected. I want to discuss all of this. It's with what is happening across the nation right now with Gabby Petito, and then speaking of Darren Snell, I was actually making a video for him about suicide awareness, and as I was making the video in Canine Corners Dog Park, that state police officer killed himself in his squad car the same moment, and it was chilling to hear about that poor officer that was in such deep despair. He decided whatever is on the other side has got to be better than this. And my heart goes out to his family.
Well,
I'm
and
sorry.
yeah,
I'm
no,
sorry
no,
I got lost for a second. It's
that's
just the talking about fate and serendipity and finding my way back to God again throughout all of this. I was just talking to a survivor last night. She's on her way to becoming a survivor. She's talking about finding her path back to God. And as long as she finds her path, to me, faith equals hope, and we need hope as a species. We need that, and it doesn't matter how you get there, as long as as long as the central message isn't every man for himself. You should be okay.
mhm.
If your God is telling you to kill other human beings in His name, then you should probably find another God. But otherwise, as long as you believe in humanity and continuing with this planet and what is best for the greater good, that is what matters. And we need to have some faith in order to have hope, I believe. That's what I have found in my own personal journey. I didn't do well um, as my time as a non-believer, but it left me because I felt abandoned and I was so lost for so long. So coming back to God is part of my personal journey. So I'll be talking a little bit about spirituality on Saturday, and
Well,
finding forgiveness is huge for me. Finding
well,
forgiveness for myself was huge for me.
Well, and I think there is in multiple arenas, we know that finding, developing, in small ways, developing a relationship with a power greater than yourself, being able to sometimes unlearn things that have been taught before about God, about a higher power, about religion, and sometimes being introduced to a different way, is critical to because as you were talking about either the police officer or the lies that go through our mind when we're afraid, and the lies that happen when we're in that darkness, I think that's one of the things that's very consistent, regardless of what are the reasons someone's in that darkness. I think one of the consistency is that there's lies that are being perpetuated in that darkness, that it's always going to be this way, it'll never change.
Yes.
If you do anything, it'll get worse, or it won't make a difference. And I think these are some common themes, but it isn't true, because your story is a great example of that. Laura's story is a great example of that. There's many stories of individuals who have took the courage to break the cycle, and I do think it does come with learning how to utilize the systems that are available,
Hmm.
counseling, the different things that we have that police can do, the statutes, that can do, but we have to learn how to work that system, instead of being
Right.
intimidated by it. So
Exactly.
so Lisa, real quick, this event that you're having on Saturday at 4 o'clock, by Rockford Art Deli and Noah's Ark. Number one, is there a cost to it?
No, no, it's completely free.
Okay, perfect. And then,
And
and
there,
if
I haven't decided yet as far as if there'll be like cookies for sale or how I want to provide hot chocolate, coffee. I'm sponsoring this myself, so it depends on what I can supply and the cost of that. But it's not going to be, there's not going to be food trucks. It's not going to
sure,
be dinner provided or anything like that. This is
sure,
just a free community, raise awareness, bring people together. I grew up here. I was born and raised here. I lived in North Carolina briefly. I lived in Lincoln Park briefly, but I am a hometown girl. I care a lot about this community, and I hate to see what's happening in the nation altogether. But like I said before, you got to clean up your own little corner of the universe. If everyone cares and everyone does that, we can change things.
absolutely. So Lisa, what's the best way if someone wanted to reach out to you? What's the best way for them to reach out to you, either on social media or
Facebook
email you?
Messenger, like I said, this is is still in the fledgling stage. I don't have a website. I am I do have one financial backer. His name is John Paul, and he ran a non-for-profit himself. He is not funding this event or anything, but that's I'm not looking for anyone in particular to show up to this event and say, yes, I'm ready to build your shelter house for you. That I plan on talking about that at the event. I want to launch my idea for an acute crisis shelter house entitled Donatella's Castle at this event. Um, so I'm sorry, there's so many things going on. I basically feel like I've had duct tape over my mouth for 15 years.
Mm,
I have all of these ideas bursting out of me because I'm free. I can finally pursue music. I can learn the guitar. I can do what I want. And I want to share that with other women, mostly. So I'm sorry. I do have PTSD, and this happens when you have PTSD and you get nervous, like we talked about. You
sure.
fall into a belligerent state, and then people think you're on something, and I'm
Yeah.
like, no, I'm not on anything.
Mm,
I just have PTSD. I'm
mm.
sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Lisa, you did great. So,
Thank you.
so the best way for someone who wants to reach out is to reach out through
Facebook.
Facebook
Yes,
Messenger.
message
Um,
me.
yeah,
Yes.
and then they also can go to it just under Lisa Silvi, Silvi,
Correct.
and then they can see your profile and then message you that way.
Yes, and I keep it going on my story regularly. The Underground Arc is available, and private message me if you're being physically abused, because there are resources. The Family Peace Center in Rockford is wonderful, and that we're so fortunate to have Mayor McNamara care so much about our cause. And Erica Ruck was interviewed by State Line News, and they they did a story on her, so you can look on State Line News website and see that. But the Peace Center also was interviewed prior to Erica. That's why I mentioned this. The Peace Center, you can check that out on State Line News. That is a wonderful facility. They're much more further equipped than I am, and anything would be a liaison to help women find the Peace Center for now until I can, get this going. And I just want to help where help is needed, basically. And if it's not here, it'll be somewhere else. But I just want to help where I can, just like these other women. So we're hoping people will come out and get this help that's offered and learn more. Even if you don't need the help, come out and learn about it so you can help others.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much for being on the show today. Thank you for sharing your
Mm.
story. And I know that it is I know it took a ton of courage to just to do this,
Oh,
because it's I know that it's always nerve-wracking to do something new, but when we are attempting to follow our passion and something that's bigger than us, we we're able to we know that we're not alone. So again, Lisa,
yeah,
thank
the
you.
trust.
Thank you for being here. Um,
Thank
again,
you.
as thank you everyone for listening today. This particular, as we've talked many times, domestic violence, similar to other factors that lead to people being in that darkness, are so important for us to talk about. And yes, it's incredibly important for individuals that do the research about this and professionals that work with it. But it's also important to hear from people that have endured that pain, as well as been able to share their story from what they learned in breaking that cycle. So thank you for being with us today. Thank you for listening. If you believe that anyone needs to hear Lisa's story, please share this. And also, if you need any help and want to talk to Lisa, you can message her on Facebook Messenger, and that's Lisa, and then Sylvie, Silvi on Facebook Messenger, and then hopefully there will be there won't be enough room for people to stand for your event this coming Saturday, and that is that'll be the 20th, I believe, right?
Yes, 20th at 4
20th
p.m.
at 4 p.m.
Mhm,
Okay. Well, thank you
mhm.
again, Lisa, and thank you everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.